welcome you all. We are, for those who don't know, we are the Rotary Club of World Disability Advocacy. We've been around for about 5 years now. And I'm going to okay, hold on. If those who have their microphones on, if they could turn them off for the moment, that would be great. Okay. So World Disability Advocacy has been around for about 5 years now. I have the pleasure of being the co-president of this organization. We have been focusing on advocating for people with disabilities and for their human rights for people with disabilities around the world. And we're glad to start this new series of training, which I think is really important series, and it's geared towards advocacy. It's geared towards be change makers. It's geared towards leadership in the community, and it is our goal to hopefully set up a team of change makers that will work together and trying to make a difference for people with disabilities on a global level, but we're focusing on disabilities here. However, a lot of what we're going to be covering in these topics could be on any kind of change maker, any kind of community service that people do. This particular one is going to start out by looking at what advocacy and what it entails to be an advocate, what it entails to be for community service. We have a series of others. They're all going to be held each month. And next month, we're going to cover leadership training. The following month, we're going to cover, which is March, we're going to cover how to do a project, how to put a plan to get a project, how to propose a project, how to implement a project. All that will be covered on that session. The session after that is going to cover fundraising, because that's critical, obviously, to project management, as you do proper fundraising. And it's not always just one source. I know a lot of people sometimes turn to Rotary for the source, but there's many sources out there, so we're going to cover all that. We have another session after that, which will cover conflict management. Each session will people will be given a certificate of participation, which what we're going to do is how you're going to get your certificate is that about a little after halfway through this session today and the future sessions, we are going to give you a link where you just fill out a quick application there, and then we will send you the certificate each month. Once again, I'm looking forward to setting up a team of us that will become the change makers for the Rotary Club of World Disability Advocacy, and we will work together as a team to assure that people with disabilities and, again, other issues that involve change makers are getting the things that they're working on, that we make a difference in the world, which we can. So it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, who's going to talk about advocacy. He's Dr. Gilbert and Jana, is that right? Dr. Gilbert, I'm sorry if I didn't say it. I'm the world's worst named person. He's with the Rotary District 9212. He's the learning chair in the district. And we're so happy to have him with us. And I'm going to turn this over to you, Dr. Gilbert, and I look forward myself to learning a lot from you. Dr. Gilbert, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Don't know where your timing is. Here in Kenya, it's evening. And thank you very much for this invitation. And the topic of change makers is it looks something grand, something like a campaign, a political campaign manifesto, but we'll try and make it an advocacy discussion here. But one of the things that I want to share first is really then to link advocacy and leadership. I know there's a discussion that you'll have on leadership the next session, but you cannot talk of advocacy without linking it to leadership. So we'll somehow find a way of pulling those two together, especially in looking at some key areas that we'll discuss this evening or this morning. First is to say that this is not a presentation. So I'm not here to present, but I'm here to discuss and we share. So it's more of a collaborative engagement. So you'll hear me asking a lot of questions. And I will prompt out names of people if I don't get to hear people answering, because I am a teacher. And then now we have a discussion, then we'll try and get some thoughts, crystallize some thoughts that will help us to engage in this conversation of what are some of the key things that will help us in driving our agenda of advocacy, especially in looking at a world disability and how are we engaging with it now, and what are some of the new thoughts that could come in that will help us enhance our focus on advocacy. So to start us off, I want to ask maybe one or two questions in relation to what we do. And the first question is in our Rotary work worldwide, are there areas that, and especially relating to what you do as a club, Rotary Club of World Disability Advocacy, maybe just first is to understand how do you go about advocating for world disability based on the focus of your club. Maybe we can get someone to give us some highlight. How do you do it currently? I see Barbara. Jay. Oh, Barbara, go ahead. Barbara Keller. How do you go about, advocating for world disability currently? Or anyone who can unmute and share how your club currently does that.
Well, Doctor, we certainly got a mix of people here, and some of them are Rotarians, most of them are, and some of them are not. But in our case, you obviously have to start with a need. You have to find a need out there. And once you identify that need, then start to build a plan on how to maybe resolve that need. The other thing we found out, at least I've found out in the 5 years I've been doing this, Doctor, is that if you don't do your homework and you don't find out maybe some group is already working on that need, you may find that you're trying to reinvent the wheel that's already there. So collaboration is an important part of advocacy. I see Jacqueline has her hand up.
Yes, Jacqueline.
Yeah. Good afternoon here in Egypt. I'm in Egypt. I am past president of Rotary Club Alexandria Faros in Egypt, and I founded a new and first e-club in our district. We try to advocate disabled person by focusing on one area of focus: prevention and control. Prevention and treatment. We did a lot of medical convoys for disabled persons. Here, disabled persons are concentrated in certain hospitals and certain homes, And we try to do screening and sorting of the types of disabilities and providing them with some devices like wheelchairs, give them some sorts of physiotherapy programs and so on. This is what we try to do. But up to now, the community awareness, we still need to do it perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, and I see Saum talking about awareness via social media, focus group meetings, and then we have organized an inclusive education summit to advocate for inclusive education. Okay, anyone else with one thought before we? And I like what you've talked about, Jacqueline, in terms of focus on prevention and treatment and issues like screening, provision of support services. But then the key aspect is if as Rotary and of course looking at the sample of Rotary clubs that are here that are focused on disability, even in many other clubs across the world are focusing on disability. Is there a time that will say that a disability will come to an end the way we have been focused on polio? And we say that we are almost there. We are almost there, 1%, 2%. Is there a time that we'll reach where we'll say that we are almost there from a disability perspective? And because of concerted effort that Rotary is doing.
I think, Doctor, it's a forever thing. It's a forever thing, sadly. However, what that means also is important that generations in the future, young people in particular, we get them focused on what we're doing here, because there will always be disabilities. There will always be, sadly, discrimination against people with disabilities. There will always be a need for helping to improve the quality of life for people with disabilities. It's not like a polio thing. It's something that's going to be forever and has been forever prior to this. Lawrence, did you have your hand up, Lawrence?
Yes, I, as leader of the polio chapter, I'd like to first start off by saying, in our chapter, we are all disabled in one way or another. I myself use a motorized chair and a ventilator. Now, when we speak about advocacy, our mission is one to educate the survivor and the medical community, if you would. And we're just beginning to formulate some way of doing that. Because if you look at what's happening of polio, and I think there's about 16,000 of us alive globally, I think. Ken, you know the numbers?
Are you saying 16,000?
I think globally.
Globally?
Or is it more?
There's millions. There's millions.
Polio survivors?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so we're millions. To think that we first have to start educating them says that we're really just taking step number one. If you look at the support groups, mainly they're complaining. I have a hurt here, I have a blah, blah, blah. Nobody knows what to do. So as a person with a disability, I now am advocating for myself. I have to replace a caregiver who's been with me over a year. If I don't start it, she'll leave abruptly, and then I'm the one left in the lurch. So I think that self-advocacy, we're just beginning, so I really shouldn't even talk because we're just floundering and finding our way. But it's important, very important, to understand polio survivors. We're alive, we're here, and we have to find some way of going forward with our life. So.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Florence, for that. And that's the gist of now this discussion where I wanted to start because we, as Rotary alone, we have, we channel a lot of resources in helping people with disabilities in, various ways. And here I like the fact that the club is also focused on that. Various other clubs are focused on that. If you look at some of the organizations that are not Rotary organizations, there are many also that are helping people with disability. But today,
Closer.
if you go back to the same
I don't have the video on. The video's not on today.
groups, the same people who we are advocating for, we have not been able to really, in most cases, enable them to be sustainable in the various areas that we are helping them. And this is where I want us to shift our focus from helping people with disability to partnering with people with disability. So that then it's not about helping them, it's about enabling them, working with them, partnering with them to be able to understand what are some of the things, how can we design our support, tailoring their sustainable requirements and putting them in the lead, so that then when we are talking about advocacy in today's modern advocacy, is really not about helping people, but is about partnering with them. One of the things that I had highlighted here is, where are we still doing things for rather than doing things with the people with disability? Because if you look at many institutions, and of course many of our clubs, we are doing things for people with disability, but we are not doing things with people with disability. It's good that we are focusing on screening. It's good that we are focusing on provision. And Florence has actually shared that, look, she had to replace a caregiver. So regardless of whatever other support that we may think that she would want, but maybe that's not it. Maybe if we're able to listen and listen keenly to people who are differently abled and disabilities, then we'll be able to understand how can we do things with them. What are some of the key focus needs for them, rather than those ones that we we generally assume that these are key for them. Yes, I'm not saying they're not key, but I think it's a shift of mindset in terms of our modern advocacy today, to then shift from doing things for to doing things with. And then that means shared leadership, shared engagement, so that then we're able to understand what is truly of concern to them. And that's the question that I ask. If we are, is there a space to reach and say, look, yes, we know that there are still, people who, in one or another, will be differently able or challenged. But is there a way that we can create a sustainable support structure, so that people who are differently able or people who have disabilities are able to continue sustaining, taking the lead in, driving their key issues without necessarily a consistent, what I'll call sometimes handout of resources as support, because then we are doing in that particular way, then we'll be doing things for them. Yet many of the people who are disabled, they would also want to take leadership. So how do we start doing things with them? And that's now what we need to be able to shift from doing for to doing with. We need to be able to ask before acting, and asking who with lived experiences is shaping this project. So if there's a project that we are talking about and we want to support people who are differently able or people who have disabilities, then who is supposed to be on the front line? Is it us who have no lived experience, or is it putting on the front line the specific people who have lived experiences, so that then they will be able to really connect and tell you that in these specific areas, these are the key things that maybe would be critical, and then how can we now give them an opportunity to be the leaders so that then they drive sustainability, so we avoid situations where we'll be doing things for. I mean, in whichever way you look at it, even for us who are okay right now, I mean, God forbid, in one or another, something happens and we find ourselves not able to operate the way we used to operate. We would want to be somehow, we would want people to help us to be sustainable on our own in one or another, and not necessarily to, do things for us, because, somehow you'll feel the need to strive and try to do things for yourself. And that's the sustainability aspect. But of course, if you look at the design of many of our projects within our space as Rotarians, the design is in such a way that we are doing things for, and of course for good reasons, because sometimes we feel empathetic, and we feel that we need to be able to support, to do things for others. But modern advocacy, contemporary advocacy today, is about allowing the people with lived experiences to take lead in those projects. So when you talk about true leadership, means creating spaces for others to lead, but not necessarily speaking on their behalf, but allowing them to be at the front line in terms of having those conversations, advocacy conversations, so that people can be able to relate, and then so that they can also be able to connect with the lived experiences of the people with disability, and they'll also be able to challenge them to be at the front line in terms of driving sustainability. So yes, there is support that we will offer, but the leaders are the people who have lived experiences. The leaders of those projects are the people who have lived experiences on that. So maybe the question that on that, as I close that first discussion, is if you review the engagements that you're having currently, what are some of the practical steps that our clubs that are engaging with people with disability can take to ensure that people with disabilities are involved right from the design, from the leadership aspect of the projects, and also in decision making in terms of the key requirements and needs that they need to have, so that we don't pull in a lot of resources, and sorry for this, Jacqueline, I think in terms of, screening, provision, but yes, these are the needs, but these are the needs that will not necessarily drive sustainability of, the people who are differently able and people who have disabilities in one or another. So we'll be supporting to do things, yes, for them, but I will not be doing things with them in a sustainable way. Okay. The second part that I want to just share is around using our influence responsibly. I'll just share some pointers. And maybe the question also here, maybe here one or two people, is how do we ensure that we amplify our voices rather than speaking over people with disability? How do we ensure that we amplify the voices of people with disability rather than speaking for them or speaking over their issues? Or maybe just currently, how do we do it? Saum, we've talked about, we do it on social media. Yes, Saune.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm joining in from Botswana. I'm visually impaired, so I will do a lot of work around advocacy, meaningful youth engagement and participation, particularly engaging young people with disabilities and enabling them to meaningfully participate in different platforms. So what I wanted to say is, sometimes it's not about what we can do for people with disabilities it's about, like I'm saying, I do work around meaningful youth engagement and participation. I established a network of young people with disabilities, a national one, so that I could help build their capacity and enable them to stand in different platforms for themselves and for their peers. As an individual with disability myself, who was in a position where I was programming for young people, I made sure that within the work that I was doing, where I was training young people without disabilities, I had to have something that is specifically for young people with disabilities, so that they can also be able to represent themselves and their peers meaningfully, and able to understand what meaningful engagement and participation mean, and how they advocate, and how they present the challenges and the solutions that they have with their lived experiences and with what they have also gathered from their peers. Thanks.
Fantastic. And I like what you've just said, because in many spaces, and this connects to the first point that I said when you're talking about doing things for and doing things with. And the key focus here is, if a young person comes in and shares the experiences in a group of young people, then there is likely to be connection, there's likely to be inspiration, there's likely to be a few young people who will say, I think I can do it, I think I can also make some steps towards it. And it's the same case even in our advocacy, that the voices that we need to be able to put on the front line in our projects, the voices that we need to amplify, are not the voices of us who are not living the experiences of what you're talking about. We need to be able to identify voices of people who are living the experiences and allow them to take the center stage, amplify their voices, and that's how we'll be positively advocating for the change that we want to see in that space. And I like what you say in terms of, look, for you as you're in that experience, and you stand and engage different groups, and really saying that, look, this can be done. We can be able to, you can be able to make a difference in whichever space that you find, even with whichever disability that you find yourself in. But we need to be able to identify and amplify the right voices. And that's now what we talk about when you're talking about contemporary advocacy. It's not about to say that, yes, as a Rotary Club of World Disability and many other Rotary clubs that are involved in that, we are the front line in terms of amplifying our voices and saying, this is what we do, this is what we do for this group. We share it in our social media spaces, which is fantastic. But the key thing is, whose voice are we amplifying? Are we amplifying our voices, or are we amplifying the voices of people who are in the lived experiences, and they are challenging, others in the same experiences, so that then they can be able to see that there is a way, even with the specific abilities and disabilities that they find themselves in, and that's the focus on key change in our advocacy. I saw Duncan's hand up. Duncan?
Thank you so much, Dr. Harry. I don't know whether I'm audible.
Yes.
I work in an initiative where I'm trying to conduct an outdoor experience whereby children living with disability and spectrum of autism are also engaged in climate action. So to affirm their voices, I have a colleague who has an acquired hard of hearing. So that means that at birth they had not lost their sense of least hearing, but over time they happened to lose their aspect, and they tend to use sign language as their mode of communication. So she happens to be more or less our ambassador in the initiative to tell their story even better.
Yeah, yeah. And that's now what we're talking about, amplifying their voices as people who are in lived experiences of those. So because why am I saying this is, I mean, Rotary globally carries a lot of huge credibility, but then how we use the credibility determines whether we empower or overshadow others. So if you look at the club, Rotary Club of World Disability, how are we using the credibility bestowed to us as Rotarians? Are we, empowering the voices, other people's, the people with disability voices, or are we overshadowing others by, sharing, yes, this is what we are doing, but whose voices are we amplifying? Because advocacy is also about, the voice that we are amplifying. So I think critical is that the media, the social media spaces, the platforms that Rotary provides for us is then the challenge is for us to amplify lived voices and not to replace them or not to overshadow them. We need to amplify those lived voices because those are the voices that will be able to connect with other, like people, and then they're able then to see that there is a possibility. There is a way that they can still be able to, live their lives regardless of the different circumstances that they find themselves with, that there is hope. For some, there is hope, even in terms of maybe shifting towards a bit of normality if there is that opportunity. So key is, let's be clear about who benefits from some of the decisions, some of the partnerships, and whose voices we are amplifying in driving our advocacy for people with disability, for people who are differently able in various platforms. The third aspect that maybe I just want to highlight again, Jacqueline, yes?
Yes, I have one question regarding this issue.
Yes.
I like your idea regarding that we have to do with them and not for them. And we have to amplify the voices of the victims or the people who suffer. But we have here a problem in developing countries because this is out of their expectations. Because when we come to touch any family or a community for disability, they expected you to give and not to share some ideas with them to help to empower them. How can we change this situation? How can we change and work for changing the mindset of their thoughts regarding the givers or the donations? They always want to take money, to take devices, to take help, to take a grant or something like this, and not to work with other leaders.
Okay,
This is my
so
question.
that's a very good question. I don't know whether Martha, your question. Let me hear your question, then I can combine.
Yeah, I want to say that it's also important to know the system, to know the rights for people with disability in this case, and also to educate the community and also the people with disabilities, because usually people make a confusion, have a confusion with charity and advocacy. We need to separate perfectly. Charity is not advocacy. Advocacy is not charity. It's totally different.
Yeah. Okay, that's a very good point there. Saone, you wanted to add something, or that was your hand previously?
It is a previous hand, but I also wanted to add something.
Okay.
What is has been just said about charity and advocacy. Sometimes people with disabilities exist in communities where those around them, the environment, it make them think it's just about them sitting and just receiving. So, like I said about building their capacity, it's very important that we who work with them can be able to let them get to a point of understanding their responsibility in them being part of development or part of things getting better, so that they can also get to understand that the receiving part is not going to be sustainable when they are empowered to speak up and to also be able to do it what can go a long way than just getting what is just being availed for them when there's availability of resources and all that. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm seeing a few other hands, but let me first of all maybe make a few comments, and we'll come to you, Angie, then Olum. So first, there's a very good point that has been shared by Jacqueline in terms of, you know, in some cases you find that the expectation is different. The idea is to drive advocacy, but when you move into some cases, you find that the expectation is for you to be able to give something. And I think somebody has talked about, you know, charity is different from advocacy, and which is very, very true. And I think that was the next point that I wanted to really highlight in terms of, remember, we are Rotarians, and we have this global outlook, and we have a global reach, but also we have Rotary clubs that are within our specific localities. So we bring in this global outlook into local context to be able to, you know, drive advocacy in a local context. But the question is, you can't drive advocacy on a local context if the challenge in that local context is also much more than just advocacy. You go into some areas, local communities, for example, in some parts here in Kenya, you identify the specific needs, and you want to raise the voices. You want to work with the people who are disabled, but there's also a need. There's also a need in terms of that are specific in terms of resources, in terms of maybe other areas. So even as you raise your voice, even as you drive your narrative, and you are pulling them to work with you, if you don't address their immediate needs, then highly likely that they will not be able to be open to work with you towards driving, you know, the advocacy and the focus that you want to look like. So I think the understanding of local realities is important in advocacy, and not to say that because our focus is advocacy, then there are specific needs that we cannot be able to, you know, immediately take care of as we drive our focus. There is the local context reality is we may need to be able to sort out a few needs first, but that should not be our main goal. Our main goal then is to see how then do we then turn that around, so that then that focus on immediate need does not become a consistent focus on immediate need, but turning it around. And that's where, Flores, you're talking about how then do we start driving initiatives that focuses on mindset shift, is by working with the individuals, the lived experiences of the individuals who are differently able or disabled. Working with them is by raising their voices and showcasing to, you know, you can tap into, in terms of a pilot group, that you would want to see whether this would work. And you can work with a pilot group to showcase that really, for sure, the mindset shift can actually work out, and that there could be some sustainability beyond just, you know, supporting them with the consistent resources as we go along. So there is a need for ensuring that there is some kind of some plan to drive mindset shift, even as we sort out the local realities in the drive towards our advocacy. And I think those are things that then we need to be critical in terms of balancing it out, so that then we don't then shift our focus to supporting the need consistently, which we might not be able to do for a very long time, rather than then seeing how then can we be able to turn a few mindsets that then will use those mindsets. Those are the people that then will have the mandate to drive the change that we want to see in the different communities and in the specific realities of the local context. I'm seeing Mulungu, then we'll come to Florence.
Yeah, thank you for giving me space. I was looking at the issue of advocating for, advocating with. Yeah, so the issue is we know when you are advocating, there is always an issue. And it also depends on the constituency that you work with or stand for. For example, if, like myself, I usually advocate for the rights of children with disabilities. And these children, I have to speak for them because of the nature of what they are. If they grow up to be youths, I have to empower them so that they can speak for themselves. But in this case, I'm with the parents. And even the parents, we teach them to advocate for their children's rights. However, also what matters is the status you have in the society. You may be heard more depending on the status that you hold in the society. So even this constituency will rely on you that you will speak for them. So this is what I wanted to clarify on speaking for and speaking with, or working with and working for. Thank you. This is what I wanted to add.
Thank you very much. And we'll just dive into that shortly in terms of which spaces can we open up so that then we come in first and speak for, then we allow the lived experiences to now, dominate the voices after. But let's hear Florence first.
Two things. First of all, would you please tell me what do you mean by differently abled?
I think it's a term that is majorly used, especially when you find that people who are born with certain disabilities. So rather than saying it's disability, because it wasn't a choice on the first place. So it's sometimes used as differently abled because then that's how they were born and they were able to navigate through that.
Number two, am I hearing you correctly when you say, are you saying you start where the person is and then go forth? Is that what I'm hearing?
Just repeat that again. Am I saying?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I quite understand. Are you saying you start where the person is and move forth with him to get him to be able to advocate for himself? Correct? Am I correct in that?
Yes. So the thing is, then what we're saying is to put their voices in front and allow them to be the champions of the specific voice, to be the lead voices in the areas, especially surrounding some of their disability areas. Because then if we are the lead, if somebody who is not does not have a disability becomes the lead voice in advancing specific engagement within the people who are differently able, then the connection and the reality of the two may not necessarily connect well. So that's why it is very, very critical to really empower the voices of people who are living with the disabilities, so that then they can be advocates of others around them, that there could be hope, there could be something that we can do regardless of the spaces that we find ourselves in.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Sanjeev?
I'm having a concern with this word, person with differently abled people. No, I don't have any different. I am a disabled. So why I say differently abled? Any abled person is also, everybody is not having all the abilities. Everybody is having different abilities. So why don't we say normal peoples, they are differently abled? Why we only say people with disability that they are differently able? No, no. So I don't like this word. I'm a disabled, and I'm not proud of, but like God give me disability, and I have to live with that. So I think it's okay with use the word person with disability, and I think these days everybody is using person with disabilities rather than person with differently abled.
Okay. So yeah, so and I agree. And also I'm saying in different contexts, people take it differently. So there are those ones, there are people that and I've had some discussions also in other forums, and the key word that they're talking about is because of the mindset and the positive aspect that they want to look at, the positive outlook that they want to look at life in a different way. So then they say, okay, rather than talking about this way, can you able to challenge us that we are differently able, because there are things that we can do regardless of the space and the circumstance that we are at. So that's why you find I use it interchangeably for purposes of ensuring that at least the different contexts that of people that are here, no one is offended by one word or the other. So yeah, Saum, I'm seeing your hand is up. Then Sigamani, then you can
on the issue of, on the issue of terminologies, I think we respect whatever people prefer. My emphasis, I think in Kenya we still use differently abled a lot, and it's interesting that even persons with disabilities themselves are the ones who've actually come to me to correct me, even when I've done some TV shows, to say that I should not use people with disabilities, but use differently abled. So I think it just depends on the context or the environment we are in. But for sure, I know people with disabilities is the preferred one, because what happened before, way back, it was called, they used to say handicapped. From handicapped, it moved to disabled, differently abled. Then now it's people with disabilities. It's been evolving, but again, personally, even for me, I'm with Sanjeev. It's just persons with disabilities.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's see us, Siga.
It's my view. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So let's see Sigamani. Then we start winding up. I'm seeing our time is also well gone.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dr. Engar, right?
Yes.
So, I've been listening to the conversation, and I knew this issue is going to crop up, right? Because I'm from South Africa, and we were involved in the policy process. But in 1998, when we had the National Commission on Education Support Services, now, using terminology is very closely linked to identity construction, negative identity construction. So, I'm very nervous about using particular terminology. But you see, this goes back to the old debate about what model are you using. And any organization, any grouping of people must use a sociological model, because the disability construction is based on a medical model. So when you use a sociological model, you will identify barriers that people experience in the system. Listen, everybody is a human being. The issue is that some people are excluded because the system excludes them, and the system doesn't create the possibilities for people to be included. It's a sociological concept, right? So therefore, when we advance training, when we advance discussions like this, we must be very clear about the conceptual model we're following, or some people may just get very upset, because I don't think it's anybody's intention to make anyone upset, but it's the way people locate themselves within the debate. And so, the inclusive movement is a movement that respects the dignity of people. That's why conceptually, if we are flawed, we can develop terminology that can be very offensive. So we must be cautious, but I've got to go now. So I'm sorry to leave this very interesting discussion. I've got another meeting. Thank you so much.
Good. And good point there that you have brought on board. And I think that point there, Sigamoni, really caps the discussion that we've had in terms of the 3 pointers. And the first one is when we start advocating with, and when we start, when we stop doing things for and start doing things with, then we become inclusive. We start now, enabling the lived experiences of the individuals be at the front line in terms of, designing the project and leading in terms of provision of the solutions that we want to see from an advocacy perspective. Then the aspect of the voices that we are raising, whose voices are we amplifying? Are we amplifying the voices of the individuals who are there, so that then they can also be, the drivers of the change in others who are in a similar situation, so that then we make them, we amplify their voices, of course, through our global voice as Rotarians. And of course, the third aspect is understanding the local context. So advocacy is not done in isolation. There are spaces where before you drive, amplify voices, before you work with, then there has to be a need that needs to be sorted out. And that's where for us as Rotarians is how then do we ensure that we bring in partners, we bring in other stakeholders who can then, we work together to sort out the immediate need. Then now we drive advocacy in a way that will be sustainable to the specific communities and projects that we find ourselves in. So I think as I wind up, the question that I want to leave all of us with is, what is the one thing that our clubs must start doing differently if we are serious about inclusion, if we are serious about dignity, and if we are serious about shared leadership in our advocacy journey? What is the one thing that our clubs needs to start doing differently? Because disability advocacy is really not only about just charity, as someone has shared, but it's about dignity, it's about fairness, it's about shared leadership. So when people with disabilities are included and trusted to lead, then our impact grows deeper. Then our change that we are looking for even cements even deeper. And that's now what will be able to bring up the bigger impact of change that we are looking for. Otherwise, thank you very much. I'm open to questions if they are still there. But it's been a wonderful evening, morning, engaging on these key areas. And I hope that there's something different that you're picking out from this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That was wonderful.
Thank you. It must appreciate. This has been a great discussion that could go on for hours, basically. But I so much appreciate your comments and your focus and helping us focus a little better on what we need to do. I do want to emphasize to everybody here that Sam has put in the chat a link. It's important that you notice that link and write down that link and follow that link, because in order for us to know exactly who is here so we can give you a certificate, it's important to fill out that link, the application that's there. There's also some good questions there and will help us in the future develop this whole process. But much appreciated. I really, it's rare that I'm quiet for an hour, but man, I was just focused on everything that was being said here. and loved it. It's a great kickoff to this whole series. Much appreciated. So I don't know, Dr. Gilbert, you know, if you want to hang out here or not. I don't want to keep you, you know, from your other things you need to do. But like I said, this discussion could go on for quite a long time. I know you're an expert on political advocacy, I think. And we may invite you back for that, because that's another important topic that we could just spend an hour talking about, because the political part of advocacy and making things done is not only working with the politicians, but know how best to work with the politicians. So that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. Thank you very much. If there is any question, I'll be glad to engage on. If none, I think I would want to appreciate Ken for this invitation, and looking forward to more engagement of such nature in future. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I think on other social platforms that I'm also there. My names are just the same. If you search Gilbert Angana, let me also on the chat dropped my phone number. If you'd want to have a conversation, then we can definitely have and see what we can do. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Doctor, I would like to just say one more thing. I actually thought the way you raised your voice, or like lilted your voice, that you were asking a question at the end and in your summary, but I think it's wonderful. The only thing I would add is that it seems like the big thing that you're saying is do the needs assessment first. Get in there with the needs assessment. And I would also say the wants assessment too. And then, of course, we have to balance that with saying what many others were saying in here. Hey, we're not charity. We're not coming here to give. We're coming to empower you so you can elevate yourselves. And, you know, it's a whole spectrum. And advocacy is just, it's the A word, and it's the starting point, really, for such a long process. So I think you were a beautiful first speaker in our series, actually. And this is getting my mind rolling. I'd love for us to highlight this to all of Rotary, starting with your synopsis now. So I don't know, I will take the lead on just listening to this again and watching your words again and trying to summarize, maybe using AI to help. And I think we should brag about this. We should tell Rotary that we have these wonderful resources to help them do better in projects and the things they want to do around the world too. And not just for projects, related to people with disabilities. We're talking about community projects too. They need to include people with disabilities in those community projects. So what you're saying is a very broad prescription for Rotary. And I think we need to get it out there more than just us 24 listeners of you today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Ted, I see your hand.
Well, good evening or good morning where everybody else is. This was good. What I can say is that's why it's so important for us to amplify our voice and get everybody involved in our communities, because that's what's going to build up communities that have either fell back, never being involved in the project, because I think once you involve, us with those disabilities, that will push us out even more, because a lot of them have just been in a box. Now it's time to come outside of that box. Now it's time to be outside and get them involved in projects, get them involved in fundraising, get them involved in some of the building, see, that makes them feel like, wow, okay, cool. I can do these things even though I have it, because see, that's the hugest thing that we have is that barrier. Well, they can't do it. No, they can do it, because I'm gonna tell you something. I'm proof that I can do it. I'm a leader. I'm not gonna follow what everybody else is doing. I'm a leader. Look, we're gonna go do this, we're gonna go do that. And guess what that does? That lets them know, oh, I can do it. I can start a project and have people around me in my community uplift me and help me do it. So this was good. And it's so important that we don't just amplify our voice where we're at, but amplify our voice around the world. So people around the world, we all come together and have ideas that will help us grow. And then not just that, help our communities grow, because now everybody connect, everybody is working together. So this was so good. This helps us out a lot to be able to move forward, because a lot of people are probably stuck in the past because of what's happened to them or what was said to them. And I think this is something that's a starting point for them to continue to take, put one foot in front of the other and keep going, and not worry about what was said or what negativity thing was said to them, because I believe we're all leaders in this room, every single one of us, because we lead in some way, and people are like, wow, you're doing it now. Yes, because I took that step. Kept going steps, and then guess what? Now you're leading a project. So this was so good. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's why I started by asking a question: what will it take for us to say that we have eliminated disability issues, the same way we say that we are almost done with polio? And it wasn't about necessarily saying that we will eliminate people with disability, but it's to give them the voices they need globally to drive sustainable, engagements across the world, the way we have done with polio in the world today. So thank you, Ted, for really then cementing that. Over to you, Ken.
Yeah, I don't know if there are any other questions, but maybe another 5 minutes or something like that, if anybody had anything. One of the things I know, one of our members, and he was on the DEI committee in Rotary International, and his point was always the facts, and you guys touched upon it today, that oftentimes organizations, sometimes even Rotary organizations, look at people with disabilities as people who are needy. And that's usually the wrong approach. I think also sometimes organizations, and including Rotary again, in that situation, they try to do things that sometimes make them feel good. But is it or is it not actually meeting the need that's there to fulfill? For example, you can send out, this is a whole another conversation, but you can send out 200 wheelchairs to an area. There is a discussion on that. When you send out mass wheelchairs like that, is it really serving the need of the people? Because the wheelchairs may not be the proper wheelchairs. That's an example. But once again, I think advocacy, as you had touched upon today, is critical to really make sure you totally understand the need in order to advocate. If there are no other conversations here, I'm much thankful everybody. Florence, get your hand up. Go ahead.
One thing I want to say, I come from the era when people with disabilities were put in the closet. I come from the era where you're told where to go, what to do. And for me, when Ken suggested I lead this group, it was like me. And I was taken back to that day. So when you speak about including people with disabilities, you have to understand where they come from. Okay, this is where I come from. when I got disabled, it was 1953, if you can put your head back. And there was a whole different world that it is now. And I'll tell you the truth, it is not that easy for me. Even when I have to replace his caregiver, this is not easy. Because I feel, oh my God, she'll be out of a job. And I go on and on and on. But it's interesting. I loved it. Thank you. Next time, I'd like to hear specifics, how you would do this, because this is monumental. And I hope you come back.
And Florence, sadly, there's still areas of the world where people with disabilities are put in a room and try to hide them away. But that's a whole nother discussion.
You remember that gentleman that spoke, that said wherever he came from, that disabled children do not get named?
That was Cameroon, yeah. That was
and let alone go to school?
Yeah. So there's still that going on. So again, thank you. We will be sending certificates out to those that were here today. Hopefully you filled out the application, or will be, in order for you to get it. And we'll be in touch, Dr. Gilbert. This is just the beginning of our relationship with this club. So much appreciated. Much appreciate, Sam, for organizing this and getting you connected with us.
Thank you.
Thank you so
much.
Bye-bye.
Everybody have a good day.